Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnerships Professional Online Development Program, the Winter Series. My name is Gary Allen, and I am pleased to be hosting the session today. The Country Education Partnership acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land, rivers, sea, ancestors, and spirits. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Gadibanut people of the Eastern Maar, and I pay my respects to the elders past and present, as I also pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, particularly any who may be joining us today. The focus of the second session in the Winter Series is women's contributions to thriving rural communities. As usual, the session today will go for exactly 1 hour and conclude at 5 p.m. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat room and we will endeavour to get back to you and answer them today. Towards the end of the session, there will be a survey posted in the chat room, and we would appreciate if you provide us with important feedback. The program is being recorded, so there will be an opportunity for you to re-watch the session, as well as any other previous sessions. It's now my pleasure to hand over to the CEO, Mark McClay, for an update on recent CEP activities. Mark.
Thank you, Gary. I'm very excited about today's session. Just one item today for CEP. On June 2nd, the Department of Education released a cluster policy. Now that on its own may not sound very exciting. However, this was a 2-year collaboration between CEP and the department. I don't recall CEP ever collaborating at that length with the Department of Education before to release a document. So very excited. The key thing is that the system now recognises that school-initiated clusters are recognised and a valued part of education. So these clusters could be formed for a variety of reasons: to run specific programs, to share staff, or could be things like camps, sports days, those more generic items. Some clusters have existed for years, others are fairly new, and we do get brand new ones who reach out to us where schools are keen to form a cluster. So it is really a landmark day. It was last week for the release of that policy, where now schools can move forward, knowing that government schools can move forward, knowing that the system supports the fact that they interact and work together, which then avails a myriad of opportunities going forward for those schools. So that was the latest CEP update. Back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Mark. That's very exciting news. It's my pleasure to hand over to Tess Kelly, who will run the session today.
Thank you, Gary. I'm thrilled once again to be asked to facilitate a session for the CEP online professional learning. Even more thrilled to be facilitating presentations and discussion between the women who are looking at women's contributions to thriving rural communities. And we've got a brilliant lineup. Each speaker is going to speak, and hopefully we will have a discussion at the end. If you, like Gary said, if you do have some questions or discussion points, please put them in the chat and we'll bring them in at the discussion at the end. So firstly, I'm going to hand to Stacey Taylor, who is a secondary teacher, but the founder of the Women of the Murray. And I can't wait to hear more about that. Over to you, Stacey.
Thank you so much, Tess. I'm honoured to be asked to present today. My name is Stacey Taylor and I'm the founder and managing director of Women of the Murray. I'm also a first-year teacher completing the Teach for Australia Leadership Development Program, majoring in visual arts. When I think about the theme of women's contributions to thriving rural communities, I think about the people who hold these communities together. They're running businesses, working, studying, caring for children and elderly parents, volunteers, fundraising, often without recognition, carrying a lot themselves, and that's generally women. And Women of the Murray really came from two different places, need and a community need. After having my second child in 2024, I felt like I lost my way and my purpose a little. And I was at that stage in my life where I was seeking something more. So I applied for a local community leadership program, and that 10-week course honestly changed the direction of my life. I was inspired by the women in my cohort. I heard their stories. I saw what was possible and what they were doing within their communities. And I developed a sense of confidence and drive within myself that I never knew I was capable of. That experience made me wonder how many other women in our region are craving this kind of connection. So just on local community groups over Facebook, I asked women what they felt that was missing. And from that conversation, Women of the Murray was born in December 2024. By June 2025, I had hosted a number of coffee and connect events across 5 towns. I met incredible women along the way, and the movement really started to grow. At the same time, I completed the Fairly Leadership Program through the Goulburn Murray Community Leadership, which expanded my network's knowledge and leadership skills even further. And as it became to grow, I realised this was becoming way more than just coffee catch-ups. So our vision today is to nurture a strong, connected Murray region where women belong, are supported to grow, and feel confident and lead in ways that are true to who they are. And the last part really matters the most to us, in ways that are true to who they are. We're not trying to tell women what leadership has to look like. We're trying to create spaces where women can discover what leadership may look like to them. For one woman, that may be talking on a stage. For another, it might be walking into an event alone, joining a committee, starting a business, going back to study. And through networking, I was fortunate enough to connect with a law firm that supported pro bono work. They agreed to take us on, and by October 2025, Women of the Murray had incorporated as a company limited by guarantee, not-for-profit, with a volunteer board of 5 directors. We also we formed an advisory committee of women right across the region who also believe in our mission and our purpose. We follow a social enterprise model, and this is because we want to be sustainable long-term. That means every membership, product, ticket being sold helps us create more opportunities for women to connect, grow, and lead, and we don't rely on just grants. And this is where the vision really became personal for me too. In the same month, I had a conversation with Kimberly Tempest, our board chair, who I first met in March of 2025, and she has become someone I deeply admire with her own work in the community and within the education sector in Cobram, Victoria. And I feel greatly honoured to have her as a part of the Women in the Murray team. But it was through one of our conversations, I mentioned I always wanted to be a teacher. It's always been in the back of my mind, but going back to study and not working wasn't feasible for our young family. So Kimberly informed me of new pathways and programs that are available now. And with 3 weeks of that conversation, I was enrolled into my Masters of Teaching. And that's led to where we are today. I'm now about to complete term 2 of teaching, and I generally couldn't be happier with the decision. And that's the power of connection. I wouldn't be on the career path that I'm on if it wasn't for Women of the Murray. It didn't just teach me that I could connect women together, but also connect to my own community too. So through this journey, I've made connections and been involved in my own community more than I ever thought possible. including in the education sector, working with the junior student leadership team. So youth and the next generation is a very big priority of mine. And that matters because sometimes when we talk about leadership, it's normally about one big thing, but in rural and regional communities, leadership is built through small acts of showing up. And it's seeing a gap, being willing to go first. So for me, Women of the Murray has shown that women feel connected and supported, not just to attend more things, but to participate more deeply in the life of their community. So going deeper into why we began, I think it's important to acknowledge some of the challenges that come with living rural and regionally. Regional communities are incredibly strong, but isolation is incredibly high. I moved to the town that I live in now, but no one knew me personally. I didn't grow up here. I didn't know anyone, so it's hard to make friends, but I quickly realised it was not me that was just feeling that way. And one of the biggest reasons people don't volunteer, step up or put themselves out there is because actually they fear of being judged. Everyone knows everyone knows their business in some way. And that's a real fear of being seen or trying something new, putting your hand up or getting it wrong. So I also noticed that technology keeps advancing and there's a growing fear of the unknown. So especially in the older generations and for some community groups, that's hard for them to keep up. And the word of mouth, while it's incredibly important and powerful, it does not always reach as far as it used to. So I saw that gap of daring for someone to go first, to just give something a go, whether it was going to fail or succeed, just trying my best and create a platform where women could see they were not alone. And that ripple effect has now led to 15 other women in our team regularly stepping up in their own communities, hosting events, and creating connection as all volunteers, not just because they have extra time, which we don't have extra time, but showing that our children that volunteering is very important and giving back and caring for your community needs to be a part of life. And that's how our communities stay alive. What we do, simple words, empower, connect and thrive. We have 3 main streams: connection, and that includes creating spaces where women can walk in and feel welcome, even if they come alone. Sometimes the biggest win is simply that women can walk in not knowing anyone, but can leave knowing they have a place to come back to, and they've made that connection. And that's been helped with our Brave Not Perfect series, where women can talk about taboo or very sensitive personal topics and feel in a safe environment to do so. The second stream is personal growth and wellbeing, creative workshops, wellbeing sessions, building confidence. We just hosted our first annual retreat that was over 3 days, but also our self-defense program. I've worked with a local karate instructor who we have now run multiple events and programs, and over 70 women have completed a women's self-defense program. Domestic and family violence is not an easy topic to speak about, but it's an important one, and I want women to be able to feel like that they're worth protecting, and it's not just about physical skills, it's about confidence, safety and awareness also, and being accessible. The third and final is leadership and professional development. Other than business networking, we have Inspire to Lead, where women can come together to talk about ways that can support their business or professional development, whether that's AI, marketing, nervous system, and we find connections that are relatable to connect and collaborate. It's also important for young women as well, because it's good for them to see women that are older than them in towns leading, trialing, failing, having to start again, and that models a leadership that's relatable, and that's powerful because young women see local women leading. They begin to understand that leadership is not something that just happens in big cities, boardrooms, or on stages. It happens right there in their little rural community too. Here are some photos of the events over the past 12 months. These photos are not just events, but just real opportunities where we've laughed, we've cried. Women came alone, with friends, nervous, but it's been an amazing thing to witness, and the feedback has been phenomenal. It actually blows my mind how far this movement has spread and the real impact that it's made on people. Quick snapshot. Since July 2025, we've reached over 525 attendees to our events, and we also have 100 financial inner circle members. And that, as I said before, enables us to be sustainable and move forward to providing things for our community. These numbers are something I'm incredibly proud of, because this has grown from just a grassroots idea, volunteer energy, and simply believing in a purpose. The ripple effect is the biggest part so far, and women supported equals families are being strengthened, young people are inspired, and communities then thrive. And that's when women feel supported. It does not just stop with her. It changes how women show up at home, at work, in friendships, in volunteering, in community, and in front of our children. When women are connected, they're more likely to step up. When they are supported, they're more likely to stay involved. Women who have attended are now the ones hosting events for Women of the Murray. Women who came once alone are now bringing others. And like I said before, the ripple effect has happened for me too, because it's created Women of the Murray to looking for connection and purpose for myself. But I've also become more connected to the town I live in, to my school, to young people, just keeping my own little community alive. And that's how communities thrive. So through one person not just doing everything, but many people feeling brave enough to step up and lead, that's the major ripple effect Women of Murray has had on people. So Women of the Murray, in short, exists for women who keep showing up, not always perfectly, not always loudly, not always everything together, but bravely. For women who are already contributing so much, but also deserve a space where they can belong, grow, and be supported too. And for the young people who are watching, who need to see that giving back, volunteering and caring for your community is not an extra thing we do when life is easy. It's how our communities do stay alive. And it's very important that we pass this on to the younger generation. So volunteering in these community groups do keep turning and existing. So when women feel seen, supported, and connected, the impact does not stop with them. It flows into families, school, workplaces, young people, and the wider community. And that is how thriving rural and regional communities are built. One honest conversation, one connection, and one courageous step at a time. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing, Stacey. Thank you so much for sharing that inspirational journey, and I could tell by your voice the passion that you feel for that journey. And I don't know if you were entirely expecting the ripple effect that you've had, but clearly it's just really taken root and you've gone with it, which is fabulous. We're going to pass now to Paris Brooke, who is the Executive Officer and co-founder of the Malakuta Wilderness Collective Incorporated. Paris, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tess. And congratulations, Stacey. That's a fantastic story and one that's very close to my heart too, as you'll learn. I'll just share my screen as well and we'll get rolling. Whoop. Share entire screen. Okay. Can everyone see that? I can't see you, so hopefully that's showing.
Yep, we've got that.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to have a chat. I wanted to start, I guess, with the simple question of what actually makes a community thrive and not survive, not get by, but actually genuinely thrive. And to answer that, I really want to take you to a place that many of you will instinctively kind of understand. So Malakuta is in the far eastern corner of Victoria. We're about 550 kilometres from Melbourne, around 3 hours from our nearest Victorian main regional centre. One road in, one road out. A permanent population of about 1,200 people, and over the short summer season that swells to about 8,000 visitors. And we're surrounded by beaches and national park. It's a place, as you can see, of extraordinary beauty, but beauty alone does not sustain a community. Like many small rural and remote towns, we live with the daily realities of isolation, limited employment pathways, patchy connectivity, constrained access to services, and significant inequity in access to education and employment opportunities compared to a lot of our counterparts in other larger regional centres or cities. And then, of course, in 2019-20 came the Black Summer bushfires, followed quickly on the heels by COVID. So on New Year's Day in 2020, Malakuta was surrounded by a catastrophic bushfire, and it was the site where thousands of locals and visitors had to shelter on the foreshore. The Navy came to evacuate, and our community made international headlines. And I think in the middle of that, something became very clear. When your economy is narrow, when your systems are very fragile, when your workforce options are heavily dependent on a short-term tourist season, a disaster doesn't just damage buildings, it kind of exposes the fault lines of what's underneath. And like many communities that are now going through disaster or have been through disaster, we didn't want to be defined by that. So 5 local women spanning 5 generations looked around at the fire, what the fires had exposed, and essentially asked ourselves a question for our future. How do we want, or how do we actually need to build the future if we want to stay here? Not a recovery program designed from somewhere else and delivered to us, but something that actually belonged to us. And that question became the Wilderness Collective. So the Wilderness Collective was built by 5 local women. One of my original founders isn't in that photo. And honestly, we didn't actually know each other that well beforehand. We came together through various sort of means, but we also essentially came together for the love of our community, for our children, for our aging parents, for our neighbours and friends, and a really stubborn refusal to accept that if you live in a remote rural location, that you should have to leave your community. You should have to leave your family, your landscape, your belonging, just to access good education, opportunities, and a decent livelihood. So we started with a vision. What if we could be a place where you didn't have to choose between opportunity and community? What if the things that other areas and cities take for granted, like innovation, entrepreneurial culture, lifelong learning, access to knowledge, could actually be built here by us, for us, that gave us really the impetus to our vision, which is to live a life fully lived. And so we started with these 3 foundation areas: co-working and collaboration, knowledge, and enterprise. If you want to build an entrepreneurial culture in a community, we believe you start with young people. In a small town, especially when you have a P to 12 college, the school is the lifeblood. When you invest in young people, you reach families, you reach the teachers, and you start shifting the culture of the whole community. So in 2023, we partnered with Malakoota P12 College to introduce the Social Enterprise Schools program in partnership with ACRE. And it's a curriculum mapped and structured program where it guides students to establish and run their own social enterprise, so a business with a social purpose. And they not only learn the ins and outs of building, creating a product, marketing it, and all those sorts of elements, but they also trade it, and they give the profits back to a cause of their choosing. So we started with year 5 and 6 and year 11, and then we expanded into years 7 and 8 and years 10 to 12. And then importantly, we've extended now into the student representative council across kind of all year levels. And the power, our students have developed through the last 3 years that we've been running that program, some fantastic products. So in the middle there is Surf Screen. So that was a sunscreen type product that they ended up selling through the local surf shop. There was a calendar that was produced. You can see on the right, we've got young students. They're actually trading products at the local community market. And I particularly loved the first image is last year, our students were asked to actually produce merchandise for our local music festival called Bastion Beats, which is held over summer each year. And they did an amazing job. And of course, there's such connection that happens with the community through trading through events like that and at community markets and so forth. And of course, they get to see the links into their own community, the response that people give to seeing their products and purchasing them, and that they see that they can be creators of their own future and businesses as well. So entrepreneurial mindset matters, and it also has to be backed by access to the tools of learning. And last year, after an enormous amount of work by our founding women and volunteers, the Wilderness Collective purchased a building on the main street in Malakoota, in the centre there. That might sound like a simple property transaction. I can tell you it was anything but it means something very profound. For the first time, our community has its own dedicated innovation, employment and education space hub, a physical home for the work that we do, a resource that belongs to our community, and it is owned outright by our community. So on the left, that's myself and some of the founders when we first took possession of that space. It was not in great repair. The roof was leaking, it was empty, it was cold, it was disgusting. And we put a lot of effort, blood, sweat and tears, with a couple of tradespeople, but a lot ourselves as well, to actually transform it into that image on the right. It's a really bespoke, beautiful place. So within that hub, we operate a co-working space for locals and visiting businesses. And in partnership with Gellin, the Gippsland East Local Learning and Employment Network, we run a outreach study hub. And that study hub is open to any student in our community, that they can come in, use printers, facilities, etc., 24 hours a day, free of charge. Because the principle's simple: no student in our community should be disadvantaged because of where they live. If they can't afford internet, if they don't have a printer, if they can't submit a video assignment because they don't have the right equipment. So in a town that's 3 hours from the nearest centre with similar type facilities, this isn't a luxury, it's actually an equity measure. Now, I want to come back to the women of our communities because, as Stacey's outlined, they are, without doubt, the backbone of what happens in Far East Gippsland and many other communities. If you take women who volunteer out of our community, quite frankly, the whole town would cease to function. It is that simple. And yet, if you ask women about their work, you'll often hear the same story. Oh, I just sort of make a few things, sell them sometimes, or I just do a bit of casual work. I've always wanted to turn my hobby into a business, but I really wouldn't know where to start. So underneath that modesty is often a micro business or a seed that has never been properly nurtured and backed. And so that's why we created as a new offer that's going to be broader than Malakuta and broader than our own region, and that's Remote Micro Enterprises Australia. So, or RMA. So RMA is a 90-day program that is backed, action-packed and backed specifically for women in rural and remote communities to start, grow, or rejuvenate a micro business. And it's built around 6 curriculum domains. It's delivered live through masterclasses led by other experienced businesswomen, as well as peer coaching, community support group, and online members portal with a whole lot of learning resources and recordings. And the point isn't just business skills, it's identity shift. So taking people from the thought of being a hobbyist to a business owner, from a volunteer to someone who's remunerated, from I make things to I run a business. And our current 2026 cohort is focusing on East Gippsland. We've got 26 women currently in that program, spanning all sorts of generations and industries. And we have nearly our entire next cohort waiting in the wings, ready to go a bit later this year. So the true benefit that this brings beyond building that sort of confidence in the individual is also the flow-on effects that brings to the communities, because women that are working, women that are feeling more empowered themselves, of course, that flows into their own families and then into the community as well. And empowering women to back themselves is the connectivity and the peer network across the region that we are really, really focusing on. We're already seeing women, even though we are still early in this current cohort, they're sharing information, they're sharing experiences. That network is already being built to support each other through what inevitably is always challenging in trying to build a business. And from next year, we're going to be expanding beyond Gippsland, offering that program out more broadly to councils, organisations and partners so that other rural and remote communities and women can start to benefit. And please get in touch if you know anyone who might be interested. But women are the lifeblood of our communities. So in our town, as Stacey also said, women are behind our Recovery Association, they're behind our sporting clubs, our emergency services, our arts, our health. They are central to health and wellbeing of the community, both formally and informally. They are the informal welfare network, checking in on people, making sure people in hard times have a meal. They're looking after each other's kids. We don't have any childcare in our town. They do this alongside raising their families, holding down jobs, and often running businesses on the side. And without women, Malakuta and other communities just would struggle. They would cease to function. And I want to sort of leave you, I guess, with 2 kind of key takeaways of what we've found, hopefully practical ones about thriving communities and supporting women to do it. And one is that investing in shared assets that reduce those barriers. So what do I mean by that? I mean a study hub, a space, somewhere to meet, tech help, connection events, reliable and accessible internet, a shared printer, a safe place to learn, some of these things sound small, but they are the difference between participation and exclusion. The other is really about backing women with capability and capacity and not just kind of gratitude. So rural communities are full of women carrying enormous responsibility, often invisibly, and volunteers shouldn't have to carry all of that weight on their shoulders. I think there needs to be a new system of ways to support the unpaid essential work that occurs in these communities to avoid this inevitable burnout and the generational change that is occurring. Because it is harder and harder to get people to go on as volunteers into these essential community organisations. And part of the reason for that is because they see those that have gone in before them burn out and struggle, and the toll that it takes on them personally. We have to change that model. If we want to have thriving communities, we have to move beyond celebrating women's contribution and actually investing in it. So the skills, the confidence, the networks to be paid, and the enterprises to support it. Because when women are supported to build livelihoods where they live, the whole community strengthens economically, socially, and also generationally. So the Wilderness Collective, yep.
That's amazing. Have you got a couple of last words to say?
No, I was just about to say thank you. and I'd welcome any questions.
I can see a few comments that have come up in the chat, but thank you so much. And I noticed that you did hit on a couple of similar themes, that isolation that can occur in regional communities and rural communities, but also I appreciate your nod to equity and making sure that we have equitable access to what we need in our communities. Okay, moving on to our final speaker, Sharlene, business strategist and visual model architect. Welcome.
Oh, hello, and thank you, Tess, for having me today. I want to say thanks to Mark, because we're here today because he reached out from a Facebook post where we were talking about connection and how we need connection to survive. So the backstory is that we haven't been having a really great time with networking here in Adelaide, South Australia. It's got a little bit of a branding issue, let's face it. Too many people are turning up, throwing business cards and just looking at ways to connect to people on a business level. And what's totally been missed is the human connection. And so we started a conversation, myself and two other women. What would it look like if we built a community that was based on human connection, and how could we support each other? So I love the fact that Stacey and Paris both have three different pillars. I don't know, there's something in that. We also have three pillars. And we also started as one person with an idea, and then a group of girls got together, a group of women got together and supported each other to move things forward. So this is how it's done. So if you're here today listening to this conversation, this amazing gathering, and you're thinking, that's great for everybody else, I don't have a network. Well, what if you did? What if you could create your own? And it was simple as you voicing that, having a conversation with a few other people, and then getting together and creating it. So what we did is we went out and asked other people, why do you go to networking events and then not come back? So we asked more than several dozen people the same sorts of questions, and we got the same type of responses, that they felt ignored, that they felt it was cliquey. The list went on, but the more that we did the work, the more that we saw it was the same issues. They weren't starting from that level of connection with humans. They were starting with what they wanted out of the event. So then what we did is we went around to 8 other different networking communities, and we went as guests, and then wrote down lists of the things that we felt were really great and things that really could have been improved. And with that, we sat down with a cup of tea, and we worked out what we feel would really fit for people, and then started reaching out to people saying, look, we're looking at creating a networking group. It's going to be done a little bit differently, and we'd love you to come along and try it out. And then with that, we've been booked out ever since. Now, we're only 2 months in. This next month will be our 3rd month, so we're only just getting started. So it's great to see Stacey's, who's been around for a while, and Paris's as well, to see the evolution of an idea, but it all starts with that level of connection. So what we've done that's a little bit differently, yes, we welcome everybody like you would at a normal networking group, but we give it a little bit of structure. What we noticed is many of the girls were very introvert, and for them, the thought of having to introduce themselves made them feel uncomfortable. So what we've done is each person either comes in with a color or a number. We're switching things up every time we're doing it, but they know exactly where it is that they need to sit, and that makes them feel really special because they've got a particular place that they need to sit. Now, these groups are in groups of 4, and they all take their seat, they get to know each other, they have their cup of tea, cup of coffee. And then what we've done is we've structured a series of questions. And the great thing about this is it enables everybody to, in a structured environment, really relax, not feel like as if they're pitching to each other, just feel like they're having a conversation. So they're talking, they're listening, and they're responding. And so they're learning better listening skills, they're learning better communication skills, and they're learning to support each other. So by having these structured small groups of 4 that rotate, we've found that women can step in and answer questions at a different level. Now, the first lot of questions are really, really simple. It's like, who are you, and what is your business, or where do you work? And then as the hour and a half goes on, the questions get deeper and deeper and deeper. And what we notice is by the end of the 3rd round, they've created a different level of connection in that room. They're having soulful conversations. They're leaning in, and they're giving each other feedback, and they're assisting complete strangers that they wouldn't be able to. Why? Because it was a carefully constructed, structured environment where they felt safe, because that's the word, safe, to have these conversations, to lean into the next level. And so, yes, we've got another event coming up, and we'll sell out again, and that is working really, really well. And we're looking forward to expanding this and also taking it to online, because we have people in a rural environment that really want to come, but the distance is too far. We did toy with the idea of moving around every single month, but that wasn't going to work. We are hoping that moving forward, and one of our visions is to have rural communities opened as well, using the same types of structures where people are given the opportunity to go through guided questions, answer them in small groups, give each other a level of support. And for those of you who are wondering, well, what do you do with the extroverts? We give them the timer. And so they then like to be in control. I'm laughing, but I'm an extrovert. Can you tell? So they've got the control of the timer. And so it's great. So everyone's got a role in this. And what we've really noticed is that the girls that came the very first time, and they keep coming back, so they're loving it, is that if they were very quiet and uncomfortable to speak in the very first instance, now they're actually taking a level of control. And we can just see in a space of even a month how much these women have grown, and they're bringing their friends back as well. For us, it's a capacity challenge, because to have small groups of 4, we need rooms large enough to be able to house that while we rotate. And if you're only doing 3 rotations in that hour and a half, then the challenge there is you're not going to get to meet everybody. So what we do at the very end of it is we serve morning tea, and the girls then can network with the people that they haven't met before. So it's working absolutely beautifully. Now we have our 3 pillars, and like Stacey, ours is connect. So one of them, our very first pillar, is connect. And what we've done is, for the 3 girls that have put this together, we've unpacked what skill sets that we bring that's unique than other people, and how can we turn up authentically to help people in that space. So Karina, who is a dating coach, just saying, and it works, just saying, is that she handles connection. So she talks in and around human connection, and she talks in and around dating and relationships. And I get the pillar of communication. So my back history is with body language and speaking coaching. So that's what I talk about. I talk how we can communicate. What are the body language cues? What can we do to turn up differently? What's your listening stance? All of those types of things to help people communicate at a different level. And then we've got a lovely Oksana, who's a little bit on the woo side. And so she talks about creation. How can we create the life that we want? So together we've created these 3 pillars, and that's how we turn up. That creates the foundation. So my question to you is, if you're listening today and all of this sounds fantastic, but you don't live in these areas, how can you reach out and have a conversation with other people that are interested in having these level of connections? Can I tell you that if you do connect with people, if you do network, if you do lean in and work with other people, and you have shared responsibilities, you know what, you're going to live longer on every level. And some other things that are really important to remember is that, is it going to be the right room for you? Every room has a different purpose. In some rooms, you are meant to be the student. You're there to learn. Yeah. In other rooms, it would be peer-to-peer. And then other rooms, it could be that you're the mentor. Now, on the rarest of occasions, you can do all 3 at the same space, but it doesn't have to be just one networking. It can be an online networking, it can be a church group. So just remember that the more that you connect with other people, the longer that you'll live, the more that you'll contribute, and the bigger the difference that you'll make. Because together as a community, we make all of the difference. I love it. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to hold this space and have a conversation about online networking. And thanks for reaching out and asking us to chat.
Absolutely amazing, Sharlene, and thank you. I can see why you hold the pillar of communicate or communication. I think, like, I've got so many words, but after listening to the 3 of you amazing, inspirational ladies, like confidence, safety, empowerment, equity, that sense of possibility but responsibility that you're inspiring in both your current and future generations in your communities, and the human connection that you are really using as your vehicle to bring all of this about, leaning on technology as well, but you're coming back to human connections, which, you know, it could be an area where quite a few of us women have lost our confidence in over recent years or recent decades. And I love that old school values, being the principal of a small school in a rural community. Every time you come together, there has to be coffee, tea, and food, because that's what, you know, helps us fill the gap when we're trying to make those awkward conversations. And people always love a little bit of food. So my hat goes off to all of you. I don't have any specific questions. I have some lovely comments of just people feeling inspired and empowered by listening to you, and what you've made sound so easy. But I'm sure, like, I know the work that will have gone into it in the background for all of you, and I'm sure that your communities are just wowed by it. We've actually pretty much reached the time for our pod pick, so I'm going to ask Kimberly, who I hear works with Stacey or recruited Stacey, to jump on and give us her pod pick for this week.
Hi everyone, and I've just spent the last nearly an hour just wowed by the 3 of you, so thank you so much. And I'm permanently living in recruitment land, so of course when Stacey said that she was interested in teaching, I naturally found a pathway for her to be teaching at my school. So I'm thrilled to have her. I'm hoping you can see my screen, but I'm just going to plow on regardless. Like everyone here, I think, spending a lot of time in the car. And listening to podcasts. I don't like to waste time, so I'm learning, thinking. Sometimes I'm wanting to be entertained, and sometimes I want to stretch my thinking. So my podcasts can vary, and sometimes it's professional, sometimes it's health related, sometimes it's mental health related, but these are my top picks that I kind of go back to. And for school principals, can't go past the Flourish podcast. And it's a really great take when I'm feeling I'm having a bad principal moment and I need to do better, I go and listen to the Flourish podcast, and I get some ideas pretty much out of every single podcast. Then I listen to this one weekly. There's always something that's interesting and different, and it's all in the mind. ABC podcast, and they go for anything from how to catch a liar and the cognitive distortions of a high achiever. So I really love that one, and I listen to every single one of them. The Law Report, I'm a little bit pickier here. I can pick and choose their different episodes out of the Law Report, but if you want to keep up to date with what's happening, it's always a really good listen. One of my favorites is The Imperfects. These are great for mental health related stories. I can't manage the first 10 to 15 minutes of fluffing around, so I tend to sort of fast forward that bit if I'm being annoyed, and it's usually a fair while that they're fluffing about. But you'll hear some really interesting people. Sometimes they're famous, sometimes they're not, but they've got some really fascinating backstories around their own mental health, their own journeys. Really fabulous to listen to. Also, I'm entertained, but also sometimes really inspired by Conversations, and that's an hour-long podcast. And they are some real
Kimberly,
life.
could you just flick to the next slide? We're just
Oh, yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, look at that. Hour long and real life conversations with some great people. Again, not always famous, but just some fascinating, interesting people. I like to keep up to date with social research and what's happening around the future. And again, they're often education related or generation related podcasts, what's happening with the workforce, etc. So that's the Future Report, and that's by McCrindle. It goes for about half an hour. For those of you interested in women's health, I picked the right time, didn't I, to come onto CEP's session today. The Dr. Louise Newsom podcast, really a focus on menopause, which is kind of where I'm in at the moment, but some really great information, generally speaking, about women's health. Goes for about half an hour, and she's interviewing people that are experts in their field. So another good one. Cautionary Tales, fabulous, interesting little read of some rare little pieces of history. I think one day I found out about the history of the Adidas shoe company and how that came to be. All sorts of random little things you hear about that, and that's usually a historical, interesting episodes in history and what you can find out about from there. My latest little listen to, and again, you have to kind of, when I'm looking for some inspiration on how to live life a little bit better, I'll either dip into 10% Happier, and I kind of like the idea of that with Dan Harris, or The Good Life Project. Two nice little podcasts. Again, you'll have to skip through to find the thing that's your interest area, and really just take out of it what you can. Always check out what's happening on Background Briefing. They usually go for about an hour, and I typically wait until the whole series is completed because I don't like to have to wait a week to hear what's happening. So they usually will pick an incident, often crime, some kind of crime related thing, and they'll do like a 4 or 5 part series. So I usually wait until they've completed their series and then binge them over a couple of days on my way to and from work. My latest, it's a little bit lightweight, and let me just flick through, is how do they afford that? I kind of liked the title of the podcast and thought, I'm going to have to read this. And I also liked the title of the people who make it, which is The Fear and Greed People. And my latest listen was about my money personality. I'm not going to share you what my money personality is, but it's a great one. And lastly, I think I'm a bit out of order, but lastly, and it's not on here, is the Ladies We Need to Talk podcast. And that's a really entertaining listen. I can recommend that to you. That's it from me in podcast land.
Kimberly,
Thanks.
you've just given me a whole lot of podcasts to listen to on my drives back and forth from work. That's amazing. I have listened to a couple of those, but I'm going to go and have a look at how do they afford that. That's pretty catchy. Okay. And I can't say this time. Ladies, thank you so much for your contributions today. I'm going to throw back to Gary, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you very much to all three presenters and to the podcast. I just wanted to follow up with Paris, if I may. I think, unfortunately, natural disasters are going to become more frequent and severe in our communities. How many agencies have shown interest in what you have done? And I suppose I'm thinking here particularly of government agencies, because to me, recovery is the most difficult phase. And it's often very blokey. And there's often conflict in communities when the recovery is not handled well. And I've got one particular area in mind, and the divisions that occurred after the recovery are still lasting in that community. Have you been contacted by other agencies to study what you have done?
That's a really interesting one. I think I would say that while we've been going throughout some of that recovery, we are more that rejuvenation and the next step. So our community had a recovery association, as many communities that go through disaster have, and this is kind of some of us were in that recovery association area and came together to form this. No, we have not had specific conversations with recovery or disaster associations, etc., about what we're doing. However, Bushfire Recovery Victoria in the early days, now ERV, there was a lot of funding at the start, which did give us some grant funding to get started in the first place, but not ongoing conversations, no.
Yeah, well, I think there should be, because I think your model is outstanding. So,
Thank
well
you.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we do not have any government funding at all. We all, it's everything else that we do that funds us.
Were there any other questions before we move on to our presenters? We're almost out of time. Right, well, again, thank you very much to all three presenters, and to Kimberly for that extensive podcast roundup. Could I remind everybody that the session has been recorded and that all sessions are available. And if I could just give a shout out to our next session, session 3, on the 17th of June. The focus for that session is wellbeing and effective communication tips for leaders. Wellbeing and effective communication tips for leaders. Also a reminder that in the chat box, the chat room is the survey, and we'd be very grateful if participants would fill that out, because it provides us with very important feedback. So if there are no further questions or comments, I say thank you.